created together with artificial intelligence.
Have there really been absurd incidents in history?
Oh, yes. Ellis, there are many examples of how historical events suddenly began to unfold like in the theater of the absurd. To fit our schedule, I will talk today about some cases of people's immersion into who knows what. On the 26th of July, 1184, in the German city of Erfurt, about 60 local nobles died when the floor of a building collapsed through the first floor into the cesspit below. They were attending the court day, Hoftag, held by King Henry VI. A land dispute between Landgrave Louis III of Thuringia and Archbishop Conrad of Mainz had escalated to such an extent that the emperor had to intervene. By order of his father, Frederick Barbarossa, Henry VI went to Erfurt to act as a mediator and settle the situation. The wooden support beams of the upper floor of the old building were already in rather dilapidated condition, and under the combined weight of all participants, the floor suddenly collapsed. The impact also caused the first floor to collapse. People continued to fall through the ceiling straight into the underground cesspit. About 60 people died from injuries, being crushed by debris, or from suffocation in the sewage. Among the dead were notable nobles and ordinary attendees of the gathering. Henry VI and Archbishop Conrad sat in a stone window niche and remained unharmed. They were rescued from ladders. Landgrave Louis fell during the collapse but survived and was saved. 669 years after the event, in 1853, the story was published in the German Gazette and entered local folklore. Henry of Schwarzburg, according to other sources, Frederick of Abenberg, had a habit of saying, "Tu ich das, so müsse ich im Abtritt ersaufen." If I did that, I would have to drown in the toilet. In the end, both drowned in the toilet during the disaster. On the 17th of October, 1814, at about 4:30 in the afternoon, a storehouse clerk at the Horseshoe Brewery in London noticed that one of the 700-pound, 320-kilogram iron hoops around a huge vat had slipped off. The 22-foot, 6.7-meter vessel was filled to the top with beer. Since such hoops slipped off 2 or 3 times a year, the workers decided not to worry and planned to repair it later. About 1 hour later, the vat burst. The torrent of beer knocked open the tap of a neighboring tank, which also began to spill its contents, triggering a mechanical chain reaction. Beer crashed into nearby barrels with force, and more casks broke open and spilled within seconds. The pressure of the liquid destroyed the back wall of the brewery, which was about 25 feet, 7.6 meters high. A wave of beer about 15 feet, 4.6 meters high surged into New Street, destroying 2 houses and severely damaging 2 more. Beer flooded the basements, many of which were inhabited, and people had to climb onto furniture to avoid drowning. People in the street and inside the houses had no time to save anything. 8 people died. In total, between 128,000 and 323,000 imperial gallons of beer were released. That is about 154,000 to 388,000 US gallons, or roughly 580,000 to 1,470,000 liters. 2 days later, stories appeared that hundreds of residents were scooping beer with buckets and mugs while standing knee-deep in it, drinking directly in the streets and basements. Some drank straight from the flowing stream. There was also a report that a 9th victim died from alcohol poisoning. After the accident, large wooden vats were gradually taken out of use and replaced with concrete containers. On the night of the 18th of June, 1875, in the Liberties district of Dublin, a fire broke out at a whiskey warehouse where 5,000 barrels were stored. The warehouse contained about 262,500 imperial gallons of whiskey, or 315,200 US gallons, or about 1,193,000 liters, with a value of 54,000 pounds sterling. In modern terms, that is roughly 6,580,000 pounds sterling in 2023. Sometime between 4:35 in the afternoon and 8:30 in the evening, the fire started for unknown reasons. By 9:30 at night, the barrels in the warehouse began to explode from the heat, and a stream of whiskey burst through the doors and windows of the burning building. The spilled whiskey formed a burning river about 15 centimeters deep, which flowed through the area, destroying 35 houses and killing several pigs. Residents first realized that something was wrong when they heard the squealing of pigs from nearby livestock pens that had caught fire, which helped trigger a rapid evacuation. During the evacuation, many people gathered near the flowing whiskey, filling any container they could find. Lids, bowls, and other vessels were used to collect the liquid, and in places where the whiskey was not burning, people even scooped it up with hats. Although there were no direct human casualties from the fire or the flooding itself, 24 people were hospitalized and 13 people died. Both the injured and the dead were victims of alcohol poisoning after drinking undiluted 60% cask-strength whiskey.
How could they drink it if it was burning?
Not all parts of the stream were burning at the same time. In many places, the flow was thin and spread over the cold stone ground, so the whiskey either never ignited there or briefly ignited and then went out. These were exactly the places where people scooped it up. On the 3rd of March, 1876, sometime between 11 and 12 o'clock in the morning, a strange shower was observed in Bath County. The event lasted several minutes. Residents saw a single piece of meat fall from the sky at first, and then the meat began to fall in large quantities, creating puddles of it that caused problems on the roads. Joe Jordan, a grocer from the area, stated that the smell was extremely unpleasant, like that of corpses. The phenomenon was reported in Scientific American, the New York Times, and other publications. Most of the pieces of meat were about 2 by 2 inches in size, about 5 by 5 centimeters. At least one was about 4 by 4 inches, about 10 by 10 centimeters. The meat looked like beef, but 2 men who tasted it concluded that it might be lamb or venison. Samples were sent to the Newark Scientific Association for analysis, where it was determined that 2 samples were lung tissue, 3 were muscle, and 2 were cartilage. Various conspiracy theories appeared. Some suggested it was cosmic meat from an exploding planet or drifting meat matter in space. Locals proposed that the meat was vulture vomit, although there seemed to be too much of it. Charles Fort, in his book, The Book of the Damned, doubted that the meat shower had really happened. In 2004, one sample was discovered in the storage collection of Transylvania University. It is now kept at the Musnick Museum of Medicine and Science in Lexington, preserved in alcohol in a glass vial. The age and condition of the sample did not allow scientists to determine the exact species, but microscopic analysis confirmed that it was of animal origin. The precise species and the reason for the meat falling from the sky remain unknown to this day. On the 15th of January, 1919, at about 12:30 in the afternoon, a large storage tank at the Purity Distilling Company in Boston burst open. The tank contained 2,300,000 U.S. gallons of molasses, which is about 8,700 cubic meters. The mass of the molasses was estimated at roughly 13,000 tons, according to the American system, or about 12,000 metric tons in European terms. A wave of molasses rushed through the streets at a speed of about 35 miles per hour, which is approximately 56 kilometers per hour. On that day, the weather in Boston suddenly became much warmer, and the day before, a fresh batch of molasses had been delivered. It had been preheated so it could be pumped more easily. It is possible that thermal expansion caused the tank to fail. Witnesses said they felt the ground shake, heard a long rumbling sound, and the noise of rivets popping out. A wave about 25 feet, 8 meters high, swept away everything in its path. A streetcar was knocked off its rails, buildings were destroyed, and entire blocks were flooded to a depth of about 3 feet, 90 centimeters. A truck was thrown directly into Boston Harbor. Molasses rose to waist level in the streets, swirling and bubbling around debris. In some places, figures could be seen struggling, and it was difficult to tell whether they were people or animals. Horses died like flies caught on sticky tape. The more they struggled, the deeper they sank into the molasses. Dogs suffered beside them. About 150 people were injured. 21 people and several horses were killed. Many of the victims were so covered in molasses that they were difficult to recognize. Others were washed into Boston Harbor and were found only several months later. Residents of the area reported that for decades afterward, the smell of molasses could still be noticed on hot days. After the disaster, building regulations were changed, including requirements for supervision by licensed architects and structural engineers.
Oh God, I can only be horrified.
On the 24th of September, 2024, in the city of Nanning in China, according to the newspaper The Sun, at about 11 o'clock in the morning, a sewer pipe exploded on a busy section of road where construction work was underway. The explosion occurred during a pressure test of newly installed pipes. As a result of the explosion, human excrement shot up to a height of 33 feet, 10 meters, and then rained down from the sky onto unsuspecting road users, pets, and everything else nearby. The waste scattered everywhere when the pressure test in the sewer pipeline failed, and numerous videos of the incident quickly appeared on the internet. Sewage spilled out and flooded the road and surrounding street. "I am covered in feces. My car is covered in stains. It's ruined," complained one of the affected residents. Motorcyclists tried to wash themselves using whatever they could find on the spot. Streams of water from nearby taps, bottles of water, as well as wet cloths and tissues. Cyclists and pedestrians had to make their way through what witnesses described as a sea of excrement. Passengers in open public transport vehicles were soaked completely. Authorities confirmed that there were no deaths or injuries as a result of the explosion. However, the force of the blast was strong enough to overturn an excavator that was on site and wash away parts of the road surface. Several cars were damaged after human waste fell onto them with force. After the explosion, a large-scale cleanup operation was carried out in the area.
My dear friends, thank you for watching. You can find all the links in the description. Leave your comments, give a like, and don't forget to watch my next video. Bye! See you soon. Yours, Alice the Fox.